Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue, and in this video I'm going to create a sort of punchier, more art-directed morph that has some free secondary animation that comes along with the morphing versus the linear sort of standard morph deformer that we all use all the time in MODO right now. And I'm going to be using a plugin called TracerX. It's a kit for MODO by Mario Baldi, and I'll put a link in there for that. It's really more of a motion graphics kit, but it comes with a whole bunch of additional mesh operations. One in particular is super useful for this kind of effect, and really a lot of other effects, and I'll show you how that works. And this head that I'm using here was provided to me by Vaughn. If you don't know, Vaughn has a book out called the Pushing Points Topology Workbook, Volume 2. And in this book, he shows you how to create a head from a box or a cube, the sort of cube modeling. And the cool thing about this is all these heads have the same topology, right? So you can create a variety of different heads, all use the same topology, which makes it perfect for morphing. So I'm going to be morphing some of the heads in this video from this book. And then TracerX is right here. I'll put these links below, but TracerX is the plugin used for the effect we're doing right here. And it's like, what is it, like 35 bucks to 35 euros or potatoes or whatever that is. And it's really, honestly, it's just, there's so much in this. There's a ton of different mesh operations in here that he honestly doesn't even talk about on his. I'm not even sure the one we're using is mentioned in his little blurb here, but there's a ton of useful stuff in TracerX, and it's really just sort of a must-buy. It's only 35 bucks or whatever, so definitely get that, and you can follow along with this tutorial. So here we are, and I'm just going to press play and show you the difference. Now, the top guy here is just a standard MODO linear morph. Has a morph deformer on there, and it goes from 0 to 100% over about 2 seconds or so, 2.5 seconds. And the bottom one has additional mesh operations on there from TracerX, and I will show you how that's set up in a minute. But first, let's just kind of take a look at the difference. So I'll let this play through a couple of times and then just sort of talk over it. Now, if you look at the top one, you're just getting this linear morph, right? Every single point on the model is moving to the morphed position with an ease in and an ease out. At the same time. So the ears are morphing at the same time as the eyes, at the same time as the nose and the chin. It's all just going at once, and then it just stops. Now at the bottom, it's a little bit different. If you notice, the eyes morph first, and then the nose sort of catches up, and finally the ears wrap it up, and they give this nice little secondary animation bounce there at the end. Now if you're doing this in a animation, you're probably going to speed this morph up quite a bit, maybe 3 times as fast, so it's really more snappy and punchy. But you get that, again, it's sort of that non-linear sort of art-directed look. Now with this technique, you'll be able to pick what part of the model you want to morph first. And then, of course, add this sort of secondary animation for free. There's a little jiggle at the end there. So let's take a little bit closer look at this. In fact, I'm going to pop open another window here, and you can see a Weightmap here. And this is the magic of the TracerX plugin. Basically, it allows you to grow a Weightmap over time. So it just grows from vertice to vertice to vertice. And there's another little part of the mesh operation that'll let you blur that Weightmap as well, so you get a nice soft transition. So on the bottom, we have this blurry Weightmap, and we have a Weightmap fall off on the morph deformer. And so the morph is following the Weightmap. So starting with the eyes, and it's growing out through the rest of the head, and finally ending up with the ears there. Then we get that secondary jiggle with the soft lag deformer. And so if I actually select this guy and pop open the mesh operations stack, I'll just keep this going here. And I'm just going to actually, maybe I'll just sort of turn these off, or you'll see the ghosting operation here. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice that there's no blur on this Weightmap, but it is growing. And there is actually, if you look at the properties of this mesh operation, there's an amount here that is animated. Let me just stop the animation real quick. So there's the amount that's animated over time. So it's just crawling from vertice to vertice to vertice like that. And then if I pop on the next one, the Vmap blur filter, you'll notice that it's nice and blurry now. In fact, let me just go ahead and close this one. Actually, let me just go like this. So you can look in a little bit closer here. Maybe we'll just do a front view over here, so we can go like that. And so you'll see that there's this blur occurring, non-blurred, blurred. So there's nice smooth fall off on that morph deformation. So here's just the regular morph, just like in the linear one, but there's a Weightmap fall off here, and the Weightmap fall off will look at that Weightmap right there that's animating. And because this is a order of operations system, you know, the weight map is growing and then it's blurring, and then we're doing a morph and it's using that grown blurred weight map to morph. And so each frame it's evaluated and it morphs a little more of the model as this weight map grows. And finally, we have a soft lag at the end to get that sort of secondary bounce animation for free. And that's essentially all there is to it. Now we'll go ahead and set it up here so we can take a look at it. But again, it's just you're art directing the morph. And so in this particular morph, I wanted the ears to pop up last, and so the eyes to go first. So I started my weight map around the eyes and the neck. So the neck actually doesn't move. The neck is the same on both the morph target and the morph source, so you don't see any motion on the neck. I think that's, you know, I think you get it. That's how it works. And so let me just show you how to set it up real quick. All right, starting from a fresh new face, let's just go through this quickly. I'll show you how this is set up. And keep in mind that, again, because this is all box modeled from the same starting point, using the same topology, you know, William gave me this head, and there's just a ton of different, let me just go ahead and turn off deformers here. There's a ton of different, you know, morph maps in this particular mesh, and so he just sent this to me. And again, because he's using the same topology techniques, like pretty much of all the hundreds or thousands of heads he's modeled is, you know, morphable into any other head, which is pretty cool. So we'll just go with the goblin again, and to add a morph map, you can of course add, you know, open up my stack here. I can add an operator here under deformers. You'll see a morph influence, or really the quickest way to do it is just to right click over here and do add morph influence. And then we've added it. Make sure your deformations are on, pressing O, and enable the deformers there. And also added this locator to the scene, which is a little annoying that it adds this locator in my opinion. I don't think we need it to see it in the scene here, so I'm just going to add it to this group that, you know, hides it. And it also adds the morph influence at 100% strength, so let's turn that back to 0. And we'll just animate this on. So starting at 5, make sure you're in item mode, press S for set key at 0%, and maybe go up here to 75 and 100%. So there we go. And there's your standard MODO morph. Boom, 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 right? But we want to art direct this where the face morphs first, maybe the eyes, and then just sort of, you know, the ears go last. And so we're going to do that with a combination of a weight map fall off, and this plugin that comes, or plugin kit, mesh operation that comes with the TracerX kit. And yeah, so let's start off with a weight map. So I'm going to go into the back of the head. Well, let's see. Let me pop open another viewport so we can see weight maps. Weight maps aren't visible in the advanced viewport yet. Unfortunately, you have to have a, you know, default viewport or the Vmap viewport open, which is fine. Hopefully they'll change that soon. And I want to go over to the vertex drop down here, and I want to add a new Vmap. And so I'm going to actually come in here close. I'm going to grab go into edge mode and just grab these loops around the eyes like that. And grab this loop right here, good enough. And then I'm going to do new map. We'll just call this starting point, which is fine. Initial value of 1, which is fine. So there we go. That's where it's all going to start, right there. And then we're going to add a mesh operation that comes with TracerX. And so coming over to our add operator, I'm going to go over here to the TracerX. If you bought TracerX, so it has its own category. And the one I want is called Vmap Filter X. And this does a couple of crucial things. One, it allows us to grow the Vmap vertice by vertice, and then it also allows us to blur it. So we're going to add it twice. So let me just go ahead and add that. Make sure, by the way, when you add it, let me just undo that, that you don't have any vertices selected. Make sure you drop your selection, because if you don't drop your selection and you add the mesh operation, it's going to add a selection operation in there as well. That's just going to select the, you know, add it just to the vertices you have selected. In other words, if I have these vertices selected and I add this, it's going to add this selection operation here that is going to tell me just to apply it to those vertices. I don't want that. I want it applied to the entire mesh. So make sure there are no vertices selected when you do this, okay? So add that, and then I'm going to drag it below the goblin morph because I want it to happen first. Let me just close that. And so this is going to happen first, and I need to select the Vmap it's operating on. That's starting point. You'll see right away it just blurred it, right? Let me turn off ghosting there so you can see what's happening. So it defaults to blur, but we don't want blur, we want grow. So I'm going to switch it to grow. And pulling back, I could turn my ghosting back on here, I suppose. We want it to start at frame 5, just like the morph. I'm going to select the amount, and again, in item mode, press S to set a key, and we'll go back up to frame 75. And here I'm going to press C to just, you know, kind of click and drag and crawl this out across the entire mesh. So just like this, right? So it's going to end up along the ears and neck last. And just like that. So I've got about, oh, I don't know, a value of 30 here. And that's actually going to change depending on the mesh that you're using and how many vertices it has. So for this one, we have 30, but if you use something with more vertices, it may be more than that. In fact, the way it's working right now, going out from the eyes is great, but it kind of crawls down the neck last. But the neck actually doesn't change doesn't change position, so that's fine. This goblin has the same neck as the girl, so there's no problem with the neck being last because that's not actually going to change. It's really just the ears that are going to be last there. So you can kind of see the ghosted view of this sort of crawling out there. So that's pretty cool. And so we'll keep that. And then I'm going to actually, I can add another Vmap filter, or I could just right click and duplicate this, or Control D duplicate. So I'm going to duplicate that. And it's a little annoying that MODO puts it below the initial one. We actually want it above because we want to grow. And then we want to blur for the second one. So set the second one filter to blur. And for the amount, we have this animated right now. It's the animation we just did. This has the same curves on there because we duplicated it. We don't need it to be animated. We'll just right click and say remove all. And that's going to remove the animation. And it'll set it to amount like 8 or something like that. You can see it blurring out nicely. So you can get a nice little soft edge effect on there. And then for the goblin, to make this work, we need to add a Weightmap fall off. That's going to use this Weightmap that we've created and animated and blurred. So add fall offs, Weightmap fall off, and then we're going to pick the starting point Weightmap. And that's almost there. We're almost done. Again, I'm going to move this locator into that group and hit play. So you can kind of see it happening. And there you can kind of see it going on there. So we've got it, the eyes first and the ears last, right? So there's no secondary animation on here. It's going in the order we want with looking at the Vmap over here, eyes first and ears last. But let's add a little more to it to get that extra sort of jiggly secondary animation effect. And so looking at that, I'm just going to add, select my mesh here. I'm going to add the soft lag operator. So there's soft lag. You just type in soft, you get soft lag. Click that, we got it on there. And soft lag's a little interesting where really the lower the strength, the more it jiggles. It's almost like it's the strength of rigidity. and so it's a little, let me just drag the locator in there. It's a little counterintuitive, but the more jiggly, the less strength in a way. So if I put it, well, let's put it at, let's keep it at 50%. You can kind of take a look at it. I'll go ahead and close this one. And let's take a look. So there is 50%, get a little bit of a jiggle, but not a ton, right? And so if we turn this down to like 25% and go, we're going to get a little more jiggle there at the end, but it's not quite what we want. And we need to do a little more work with the animation to get that sort of final jiggle there. So what I want to do, select our morph operation, and let's take a look at our animation. It's just this little ease in, ease out. And so I think I'm going to ramp up. Let's do this. And then let me undo that. I'm going to middle click for a new keyframe, not quite at the end, but near the end. And I'm going to middle click. I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to overdrive this morph by about 130 or 40% or so. Let me just sort of scooch that over, like maybe 140%. And I'm also going to break the slope, and I'm going to drag down on this one so it really sort of accelerates and ramps up, and then accelerates back down and then eases into that final position. And by moving these vertices this much in this final part, the soft lag operator is going to pick up on that change in position there, and it's going to give us more of a jiggle. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Let me just pop up to the top here and go back to the beginning and hit play. And boom. So that's a lot more what we had in mind there. So the slow morph like that. And of course we can speed this whole thing up. Like I said, this is all kind of happening in slow motion here, but it's kind of cool the way it's happening and jiggling like that. And you get that secondary animation really for free, if which is pretty sweet. Now you would think you'd be able to add some fall offs to the soft lag effect, like maybe some effects on the ears, so you're just getting like a Weightmap on the ears and use a Weightmap fall off. But honestly, from what I've my experiments at least, fall offs do not work super well with soft lag. You can give it a try if you want to. Also note that I'm using, if I look at my model here, I'm actually using just regular MODO subdivs, right? And not Catmull-Clark subdivs. for playback. For whatever reason, Catmull Clark subdivs and morphs, it plays back super slow. So, you know, you can always go with the base mesh here and turn it into polygons, and it's super fast, you know, when you play it back. But it's also really fast with just regular tabbed regular MODO subdivs versus Catmull Clark subdivs. So anyway, just a note there. If you could also keep it in polygon mode, and then when you're ready to render, you can always add a set polygon type up here. Whoops, you set polygon type right there, and that'll just, you know, you can just have that turn into Catmull Clark at the end of the day, so it's turned into Catmull Clark there, and you just keep it off, right? So it'll you know, play back however you want it, and then, you know, at the end of the day, if you're rendering or whatever, you want to turn it into Catmull Clark. If you have displacement maps or something, then you could do that right here in the modeling stack. So anyway, if you want to speed it up, you can use MODO's. It's actually MODO's new graph editor on 13 has some cool features. Let me pop open the graph editor. If I want to grab everything that's animated here, I can grab the morph here with the goblin. I can also grab the animated Vmap filter there, and those are both animated right. And you can do these stacked animation curves now in MODO if you want to. So you can click here for stacked curves, and you can grab them. So you can see them both at the same time, sort of normalized between 0 and 1. And then I can also just sort of drag them in like this. So it's going to happen a little bit faster and be a little bit a little more dynamic when it does the morph, and so you get a little more jiggle there. So, you know, speed it up however you want, but that's it. That's the tutorial. So art directing your morphs and getting some secondary animation, really just sort of punching your morphs up with the TracerX kit and Soft Lag. Boom. Cool.
Yum, yum!